Sir Claude says, "It's true you did send me postcards from Zurich, but you know that I can't decipher your writing. I like to have the cards, just to know where you are, by reading the postmark," Lady Elizabeth says. "But Claude, I'm glad to find that you've taken my advice," Sir Claude says. "Your advice about what?" Lady Elizabeth says, "To engage Mr. Colby. I really am distressed. This is not the first sign that I've noticed of your memory failing. I must persuade you to have a course of treatment with Dr. Repin. No, at your stage, I think with Dr. Leroux. Don't you remember? I've said before I left, trust my guidance for once, and engage that young man." "Well, that was Mr. Colby." Sir Claude says, "Oh, I see. Yes, now I'm beginning to remember. I must have acted on your guidance." Lady Elizabeth says, "I must explain to you, Mr. Colby, that I'm to share you with my husband. You shall have tea with me tomorrow. And then I shall tell you about my committees. I must go and rest now." Sir Claude says, "Yes, you go and rest. I'm in the middle of some business with Mr. Lady Elizabeth says, "Colby." And she exits. Sir Claude says she actually went and changed her own ticket. It's something unheard of. Egerton says, "Amazing, isn't it?" Sir Claude says, "If this is what the doctor in Zurich has done for her, I give him full marks. Well, Egerton, I seem to have brought you up to London for nothing." Egerton says, "Oh, not for nothing. I wouldn't have missed it. And besides, as I told you, I've done some shopping. But I'd better be off now, Mr. Simpkins. If anything should turn up unexpected, and you find yourself nonplussed, you must get me on the phone. If I'm not in the house, I'll be out in the garden, and I'll slip up to town any day if you want me. In fact, Miss E. said, I wish he'd rung us up. I'm sure he has a very cultivated voice." Colby says, "Thank you very much, I will. It's reassuring to know that I have you always at my back if I get into trouble, but I hope that I shan't have to call upon you often." Egerton says, "Oh, and I forgot, Miss E. keeps saying, why don't you ask him out to dinner one Sunday?" "But I say, we couldn't ask him to come all the way to Joshua Park at this time of year. I said let's think about it in the spring, when the garden will be ready. Oh, it will really be a treat to look at. Well, I'll be going." Sir Claude says, "Goodbye and thank you, Egerton." Egerton says, "Good day, Sir Claude. Good day, Mr. Simpkins." And Egerton exits. Sir Claude says, "Well, Colby, I've been calling you Mr. Simpkins in public till now as a matter of prudence, as we arranged, but after 2 months, and as my wife insists upon your being Mr. Colby, I shall begin to call you Colby with everyone." Colby says, "I'm sure that will make it easier for both of us." Sir Claude says, "Her sudden arrival was very disconcerting. As you gather, such a thing never happened before, so the meeting didn't go quite the way I'd intended, and yet I believe that it's all for the best. It went off very well. It's very obvious that she took to you at once." Colby says, "Did she really think that she had seen me before?" Sir Claude says, "Impossible to tell. The point is that she's taken a fancy to you, and so she lays claim to you. That's very satisfactory. She's taken it for granted that you should have the flat. By tomorrow she'll be sure it was she who proposed it. So I feel pretty confident that, before long, we can put matters onto a permanent basis." Kind of like people... so this character is kind of like people who, they basically say the same thing, and like they're taking credit for what was just said. It's like, why in the world are you saying that? Colby says, "I must confess that up to this point, I haven't been able to feel very settled. And what you had in mind still seems to me like building my life upon a deception. Do you really believe that Lady Elizabeth can ever accept me as if I were her son? Sir Claude says, as if you were her son? If she comes to think of you as the kind man that her son would have been, and I believe she will, though I'm perfectly convinced that her son would have been a different type of person, then you will become her son in her eyes. She's like that. Why, it wouldn't surprise me if she came to believe that you really are her son instead of being mine. She has always lived in a world of make-believe, and the best one can do is to guide her delusions in the right direction. Well, just like mythology, if it's not literally true, if it's not literally good, you can kind of direct it there or say that it represents that. So mental illness, you can kind of, same thing too, right? Colby says, it doesn't seem quite honest. If we all have to live in a world of make-believe, is that good for us? Our kindness to her? Sir Claude says, if you haven't the strength to impose your own terms upon life, you must accept the terms it offers you. But tell me first, I've a reason for asking. How do you like your work? You don't find it uncongenial? I'm not changing the subject. I'm coming back to it. You know, I've deliberately left you alone. And so far, we discuss only current business, thinking that you might find it easier to start by a rather formal relationship and adapting yourself to a new situation. Colby says, I'm very grateful to you for that. It is indeed a new and strange situation, and nothing about it is real to me yet, Sir Claude says. But now I want to be different. It's odd, Colby. I didn't realize, till you started with me here, that we hardly know each other at all, Colby says. I suppose there hasn't been the opportunity, Sir Claude says. When you were a child, you belonged to your aunt, or so she made me feel. I never saw you alone, and then when I sent you both over to Canada in the war, that was perhaps a mistake, though it seemed to have such obvious advantages that I had no doubts at the time. That's 5 years, and then your school, and your military service, and then your absorption in your music. Colby says, you started by asking how I found this work. Sir Claude says, yes, how did you find it? Colby says, in a way exhilarating to find there is something that I can do, so remote from my previous interests. It gives me, in a way, a kind of self-confidence I've never had before, yet at the same time it's rather disturbing. I don't mean the work, I mean about myself, as if I was becoming a different person, just as I suppose, if you learn to speak a foreign language fluently, so that you can think in it, you feel yourself to be rather a different person when you're talking it. I'm not sure at all that I like the other person, that I feel myself becoming, though he fascinates me, and yet from time to time, when I least expect it, when my mind is cleared and emptied, walking in the street or walking in the night, then the former person, the person I used to be, returns to take possession, and I am again the disappointed organist, and for a moment the thing I cannot do, the art that I could never excel in, seems the one thing worth doing, the one thing that I want to do. I have to fight that person, Sir Claude says. I understand what you were saying much better than you think. It is my own experience that you were repeating, Colby says. Your own experience? Sir Claude says, yes. I did not want to be a financier. Colby says, what did you want to do? Sir Claude says, I wanted to be a potter. Colby says, a potter?